The Yankees survived the gauntlet, playing 4 playoff teams consecutively. The New York Yankees go 7-5, which is all things considered really dang good. But at the same time, the Toronto Blue Jays go 8-4 over the same stretch, and the Yankees lose a game in the process of defeating all these playoff teams. But maybe returning to the mean, because the Yankees have an easy stretch, the easiest stretch in baseball over their next few weeks as the season comes to a close and the push for the playoffs only heats up more. Justin Chevallella joined, as always, by my good friend Dylan Price. And Dylan, on this Tuesday night, I ask you, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Justin. It was a great day to have a great day, and it is always a great day when we finish it off with a little bit of Bomber Boys action. We got a lot to talk about. I think it's going to be a loaded show. We are in the final stretch of the season. Last week started it with saying it was the stretch, but the gauntlet's over. You said that I think all things considered, for a team that has struggled to beat teams above 500 this year, I would consider a 7-5 run in the gauntlet not great, not going to light the world on fire, but you survived the gauntlet. You came out on the upper hand of the gauntlet. And I think all things considered, there is a large contingent of Yankees fans, myself included, who view this last 12-game stretch as a win, which gives me some, pump some juice to come onto the show today. So I'm doing well. How are you?
Can't complain, re-energized, and the Yankees are, well, sitting here and they're doing well tonight. That also always helps as well. So got the energy flowing on this Tuesday night. Again, like you said, always a great time when we can end the night yapping about the New York Yankees, whether that be good or bad. And let's just get straight into it, because we've kind of applauded the Yankees over the first 2 minutes of this show, but we're going to panic about them right off the top today. We normally save this for a little bit later in the show, but that brings us to this week's pinstripe, panic meter. And that is the standings, specifically the AL East standings. It feels all but finalized that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to win the AL East. 5 games up now on the Yankees. Again, the Yankees survived the gauntlet. The Blue Jays didn't have a gauntlet. They go 8-4 in the stretch. The Yankees go 7-5. They gain a game on New York. And then last night, playing the Tampa Bay Rays, the Blue Jays make a comeback, while the Yankees, who knows what they did on, that overnight flight from Boston to, Minnesota, which is a different problem. MLB scheduling of the Yankees lately has been anything but friendly. Going from a late night game in Boston, I don't believe the Yankees got in till it sounded like 4 a.m. or somewhere around that area. Again, that's 2 straight weekends it's happened to them. Now, they had all day and they had an extra hour. However, it didn't help them. They blow up against the Minnesota Twins. Carlos Rodon was okay. And then, of course, the bullpen, which we'll talk about at some point, once again failed. And the offense didn't put up anything in the loss. Don't want to focus too much on that. We want to focus the big picture. The Blue Jays are now 5 games up on the Yankees. The season, it's fading, right? I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's not like we're sitting here in May saying the Yankees season is over. No. The season is legitimately almost over, and it feels all but likely the Yankees are the top wild card, which in itself is fading a little bit too. Just a half game up on Boston, or 1 full game up on Boston, rather. But, of course, the Yankees have an easier stretch going the rest of the way. So, Dylan, on a scale of 1 to 10, to 1 decimal place, as we always do here, what is your panic that the Yankees are not going to win the AL East and instead will have to play in that wild card round? Because at the end of the day, we shouldn't be panicking about the standings themselves, because the Yankees are going to make the playoffs, all but likely at this point. The question is, can they survive that wild card round? So what is your concern level? They're lined up with Boston right now for that first series, potentially the only series.
So panic about the American League East right off the bat is about a 9.6. I mean, it's all but, you said it, it's all but a sure thing. They're up against the Blue Jays right now, taking a little bit of a gander at the rest of the Blue Jays schedule. They'll play the Blue Jays as a part of this 4-game stretch. Then they have the Royals, the Red Sox, and the Rays again. It's a Rays team that, I mean, this season's over. I mean, it's not going to happen. Royals could be interesting. They're still, in striking distance, but they're not. So that feels like you're kind of catching two teams at the perfect time. I always say it's my favorite analogy. There's nothing scarier than a team with nothing to lose, but also they have nothing to gain at this point. They're just going to trot people out there and try to survive the last few weeks of the season healthy. Last week and a half, essentially, the season healthy. And then for the Red Sox, that series could get interesting. But even if somehow they have a sham loss in here, 2-3 of those to some of those teams, which is probably inevitable at this point of the season, especially if they lock down the American League East. The other thing then is that Red Sox series. And I think the scarier part of that is that is in Toronto, and that fan base is probably that I would probably look at as the series where they're going to have a shot to lock it down, either the last game of that Royals series, second to last game of that Royals series, and then the Red Sox series. I think they want to lock it down at home. I think they have the chance to do that. And I think to do it against the Red Sox would probably be all the more sweet. So I think that's part one of that, because I think that it's almost a foregone conclusion that even if they get through that stretch and get banged up a little bit and nicked up a little bit, the Yankees losing last night, losing Sunday night. I know a lot of people have kind of shrugged at last night's game. There was a quote I heard from a fan earlier that said it kind of just felt like the fans needed an off night after this gauntlet, and that already had people lethargic to watch the game. And then you had the players coming in off a awful travel night. I mean, it was kind of one of those games that you just want to wipe your hands clean up, wipe the slate clean, and move on to the next day. But when you lose,
which they're doing pretty well so far.
Yes,
today.
But when you lose a getaway day and then also lose that, then all of a sudden, just like that, the gauntlet, that takes a hit. I mean, that takes a hit to the run, the momentum, even if it seems like they flushed that tonight. But so the Blue Jays continue to win. The Blue Jays continue to roll. And at this point, like I said, and like you said in your open, it's 5 games. It's pretty much theirs for the taking. But I think, 9.6, there's the 0.4 that maybe something completely hits the fan, but I just don't feel like that's going to happen at this point. The best chance to get your get back on the Blue Jays is in the postseason. It's not going to be by somehow stealing the American League East from their hands at the final moments here. The rest of the standings do scare me. I think there was a take that I heard today, actually shared by none other than the manager of the New York Yankees, that the venue isn't as important, especially if that's what you're fighting for at the end of the day, than just making sure that everybody's in there at the end of the day in the wild card. Bullshit. Sorry. The venue is important. And Yankee Stadium is vital. And vice versa, if it's Boston, I don't want the Yankees to play at Fenway Park in the postseason. And right now, I'd actually have more confidence that Boston's going to show up, be rowdy, and be a rabid fan base for a team that they traded Rafael Devers pretty early on in this season. They didn't necessarily expect the kids to be this all right and for them to get to this point in the season. Everything else has been cake, and they've been pretty solid. And particularly against the Yankees outside of this last stretch, they've had the Yankees number holistically this season. And so for me, I don't want to play in Boston. I want every advantage I can get. And that half a game back right now, or a game and a half back right now, is a little scary to me. So I do get a little bit nervous and panicked about the standings itself, because I don't really want to see Boston if I am the Yankees. I think you probably have a good chance to run into them, but I want to see Boston in Boston, and I want home field advantage if I can get it. So I think at the end of the day, that's the big kicker for me. If I can play more games in the boogie down, that's going to be imperative here. So yeah, American League East might be all but out of the question. Then I want that first wild card slot. I want that first wild card slot. I want to control. I want the road to the next round to lead through the Bronx, lead through the boogie down. And right now, it's not a guarantee, right? I mean, it's not, I knocked on my head, knocking on wood. It's not a guarantee they make the postseason, but it looks pretty darn realistic. The problem for me is that the fact that they went out there today, and I know this is already a heated start to, my point here, but don't ever say that the venue is not as important. The venue is important. Home field advantage is important. And getting it over Boston and not having to play more games in Fenway, that's a win.
I mean,
so I can about the standings too.
Oh, my bad. Thought you were done there. But I agree. I think that's a lazy take from the manager. First of all, your job as a manager, specifically of the New York Yankees, is to win as many games as you can. And I don't care if you're sitting here and like, we're firmly in the playoff spot. Because before you know it, Cleveland could get hot. The Rangers, even the Royals with their outside chance, and you could be knocked out. For the entire season, we've been talking about Houston being the AL West representative. They got knocked to the third wild card spot this week because of Seattle and because they've been struggling. Don't tell me that, the venue doesn't matter and that, maybe these games aren't as important. These are extremely important, especially against a team that's 9-4 against you this season. And the Yankees are 44-31 at Yankee Stadium this year. They are 39-36 on the road this year. Yeah, the venue does matter. And let's go one step further. A potential third starting pitcher in the playoffs goes by the name of Will Warren. Do I think it's going to be him? No, but we don't know what the Yankees' direction is going to be right now. Will Warren is 6-4 with a 3.28 ERA in 15 home starts this season. On the road, 2-3 with a 5.81 ERA in 16 starts. He has pitched 82 1/3 at home in 15 starts and 69 2/3 innings on the road in one more start. The venue does matter. You need to lock this up at Yankee Stadium. Look, I'll put it there. I'm not worried about the AL East because I think it's done. My AL East, honestly, it's a ranking of 1 to 10. It's a 1. Who cares? You shouldn't be focused on the AL East. It's a 1 because it doesn't matter. It should be what?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. They're not going to win the AL East. That's why I'm not worried about it.
Okay. My panic here is that it does matter, and I think I'm panicked because it's out of reach. That's
obviously,
how I viewed it.
Obviously, if this was,
I'm saying I think we had a logistical mess up here on the panic meter because I am panicked because they're not going to win it. Your lack of panic is because they're not going to win it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm not panicked because I just okay. If I had to say, give it a panic to win the American League East, I'd be up in the 9s with you. But it's out of the equation at this point. I'm more focused on the wild card. I don't care. If the AL East happens to fall into the hands of the Yankees, that's great. But I'm not panicked about what happens in the AL East anymore. It'd be awesome. Again, like I'm saying, it'd be great to get the AL East. But it really doesn't matter. You have to lock up wild card 1. You have to lock up that game, that series at Yankee Stadium, even if it's against the Red Sox. Because every game at home helps. And it's not like it's a game at New York, a game at Fenway, and then a game back at the stadium. It's 3 straight games at home. And you're talking about players from the opposing team having to settle into a city, a bright light city for 3 days. And I know it happened in the regular season. I know Boston came into New York with no problem, but the lights are different in the postseason, especially in New York Yankees postseason, when you finally get to kick the tourist out of the stadium and Yankee Stadium becomes a Yankee fan actual experience for once. Besides the point there. As for the AL wildcard, I am really, really damn concerned because I don't see, and this is a conversation we're going to have in a little while, I don't see the Yankees doing as well over this next stretch against the Twins, White Sox, and Orioles as they should be doing. You already dropped one game last night. I know at the moment it's 7-1 in the top of the third. You should beat up on these teams. But Baltimore had your number the last, or earlier this season. You've struggled against AL East opponents. That's 6 of your remaining games is against that team in Baltimore. And Baltimore is an over 500 team over their last 103 games. And I know you're like, well, look at their overall record. Great. They got off to a slow start, but they've heated up and they've been a tough team to get down. And you've seen it with other AL East teams and other playoff teams in general. I think they just had a pretty good series against the Dodgers. Whatever the case is, I am worried about the wild card because of the way the Yankees might play this stretch. We've always seen the Yankees, play down to their opponent. And we've seen it not just last night, but we saw it in their last couple stretches against, weaker opponents. You saw it from May 28th to July something or to August something. We've seen it. We've seen the Yankees play down to their competition. So I'm worried about the wild card. I'd put the wild card at probably a 9.1. You have to lock up that wild card spot. And you can't just look at these games as, we're playing weak opponents. These games are playoff games. And I hate that because they're not playoff games, but you got to treat them like playoff games. As much as they're not against playoff teams, your playoffs and how far you're able to go is dictated by this next stretch of games for the Yankees. And for me, again, like I said, I just see them playing down. They've done it too many times for me to be like, yeah, they're going to do great, because we haven't seen the Yankees be able to be great against these bad opponents. So I'm worried. I'm not as worried about the AL East because I think it's out of hand. I think you should just put in, E next to the Yankees, the Red Sox, Baltimore, and obviously the Rays, and put that E next to them and just give the Blue Jays the Y in the standings for clinched. I know it's not how that works. You got to make it mathematical, but it's all but mathematically, done at this point. So that's my take on it. I know we had a little mix up there on the panic meter, but I think we get the same kind of, point.
Apparently, so they say. We had the same point, just vastly different scores, but I digress.
Yeah, you know what? It happens.
Okay.
Well, no matter what happens over this next stretch, it's likely, again, not fully set, that the Yankees make the playoffs. And with that being said, you got to take a look at the playoff picture and how it currently sits. Plenty of games left for things to change. You see it. Toronto gets the bye, as does Detroit in the AL, and you get Seattle and Houston, which would be, I think, a really fun series, and New York and Boston, which is also a fun series. You get, the AL West versus the AL East, the AL West versus the AL West, and then the AL East versus the AL East. Then you go to the NL. It doesn't matter as much for the Yankees until that final series, the World Series, if the Yankees happen to get there. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, they have the byes, and the NL wild card is the Dodgers and the Mets. Ooh, that could be a little fun. And the Cubs and San Diego. We just talked about what it's going to take for the Yankees to, make sure they're in a position to win. You look at this current playoff picture, and let's go percentages. I don't want to do 1 through 10. We got confused there last time.
Yeah.
Let's go percentage. What percent or likelihood would you give the Yankees to be able to go through this AL field and be able to get to the World Series? I'll touch on the World Series in a second, but just to fight their way through the wild card, through the division, and through the ALCS as currently lined up.
It would be an all-out war, a drag-out war. You would also probably need to hope for a little bit of chaos, in my opinion. I think chaos could benefit you on both sides of this, even though you don't look to the National League. You look to the National League. I think for me, it would get a little scary based on the fact, first off, that you have Boston in the first round. It's not like you have a slouch at all. I mean, no team in the playoffs is a slouch in its own right, but there are some matchups that look a little bit more favorable. Boston scares me because of the nature of the rivalry, the nature of the beast, and the fact that Boston has had the upper hand. And I also would throw in how, again, important getting that top seed in the wild card slot is, because getting the advantage again for New York is advantageous. But say you get through that, which in its own right probably is going to be a war, then you have, in all likelihood, and in this layout, Toronto. Okay, that's a little bit scary. Between just the random stuff that popped up earlier in the season between Sportsnet and, yes, in its own right, you're going to have some rivalries and words shared there, but Toronto's fan base, not big fans of the Yankees right now, and vice versa. Yankees fans do not like those dirty birds. And so I think there's going to be a bit of a heated nature of that. And then, I heard this the other day, and I kind of have continued to reiterate this about both Toronto and Milwaukee. To me, Detroit and Philadelphia are the two best teams right now. Toronto and Milwaukee are the two teams that have not as much, in my opinion, talent as those two teams I just mentioned, but they got something, and both teams got some lightning in the bottle right now, and they've had it all season, particularly Milwaukee. By the way, reading of the letter, for those, if you know, that was almost going to make me tear up, and I don't even love the Brew Crew. But I digress here. Milwaukee and Toronto wouldn't scare me as much as like the Detroits and Phillies. But then if you're the Yankees, you have Boston, who's kicked your asset points this year. Toronto, who that's going to be a drag-out bloodbath war. Let's say everything goes according to plan, seed by seed here, you get Detroit.
You're not hitting Tarek Skubal.
No, you're not hitting Skubal, so you're already behind the 8 ball in 2 games there, maybe 3. Somehow he comes out there again, which could. Game 7, could. We've seen crazier things happen, and if he's got the Yankees number, why not? So amongst other things, that's what would scare me, because you have Boston, who already That's going to be a war. Toronto, maybe worse. And then Detroit, the team that has had your number more than any other team this season, and the pitcher who you have not been able to crack in the slightest. In terms of teams that have been there and are built for this, New York on the American League side is far and away the most equipped to handle it. They did it a year ago. They ran the table and got in. But that was a different team. This is a different team. We're going to find out what this team's made of. I mean, truthfully, everything we talked about the first 162, if they get into the dance, doesn't matter much anymore. Because last year, I don't know if anyone would have coined Giancarlo Stanton to quite literally carry the team on his back to the World Series at points in the postseason. You find out what the team's made of, but looking at the route that they would potentially have to get through to make it back to the World Series, it's definitely not exactly comforting. And then the National League is also very, very scary. I don't want to play at the bank, and Philly looks damn good right now.
And it feels like it's nowhere near the same playoff field that the Yankees, and I know the teams are different, so obviously on the surface, but you get into it, the competition was not nearly as tough last year in the American League. And, people were like, it's wide open, and the Yankees took advantage of it. In this year's iteration of the playoffs, I still feel it's wide open. I feel like any of the 6 teams listed for the American League could be in the World Series, but it feels like these other 5 teams outside the Yankees are tougher than the other 5 were a year ago. And you saw that because I think the Yankees made, pretty easy work against their opponents, and obviously fell short against the Dodgers when it was all said and done. But, I agree with your point on Detroit. I don't think you hit Skubal, like I said. You did just take 2 of 3. I believe it was, against Detroit last week, but Skubal didn't pitch. What happens if Skubal pitches? You take 1 out of 3? Maybe you somehow get that win. You couldn't hit him last year in the Little League World Series Classic. You haven't really hit him throughout his career, and you struggle against, weak pitchers. Woods Richardson last night getting a career high in strikeouts against the Yankees. And I'm giving them a little bit of a break considering the tough travels like we talked about. But it has been constantly the Yankees have, I keep saying played down to the level of their opponent, but bad pitchers have dominated the Yankees. We came on here at some point when we were, really early on, and I forgot what the stretch was. It was like shut out for 20-something straight innings. And you looked at the pitchers that did it, and it was guys with ERAs 5, 6. Well, you got shut out by 1 last night. And as much as Skubal's the ace of Detroit, you look at some of the other guys behind him. Yeah, Casey Mize has looked good at times. His ERA is, I believe, in over a 5 for the season. Look at, you can go down and you see that, throughout a bunch of these rotations. A lot of guys have tough, or a lot of teams have tough guys up top. I mean, Boston, I think that's the team you don't want to face one bit, which stinks because right now you're lined up to face them. Garrett Crochet is a tough guy to read. You ended up scoring off of him on Sunday Night Baseball. That's great. But you also had Will Warren go and get crushed by the Red Sox for seemingly the 8th time this season. He's got an ERA over 9 against Boston this year. Houston, you beat up on, specifically at Houston. They got the best of you in New York, though. I believe they took 2 out of 3 in New York. You were able to go play in Houston. Venue does matter, and maybe in that series, it's the opposite way. You'd rather be in Houston. But the simple matter of fact is the Yankees will need to find a spark or something from somewhere else to compete with these AL guys, because it feels like, yeah, the Yankees are a talented team, but you're still without Garrett Cole. You're still without, these, even as stupid as it sounds, Oswaldo Cabrera coming off the bench and being a versatile piece. You're without Jake Cousins in the bullpen. You're without Jonathan Loaisiga. You're out without Clark Schmidt. You're without all these guys, and you're still competing. But it feels like these other teams might be a little bit healthier and a little bit more, talented. I don't want to say up top because obviously the Yankees have, Judge and Bellinger and Stanton, but I guess more talent throughout. The Yankees lineup, you and I could go through, and we probably will in a couple minutes. You've got this guy not hitting, and you have this guy not hitting, and this guy, and obviously the season-long problems of Wells and Volpe. So I think from that perspective, this AL picture doesn't look as friendly to me as maybe we want it to be. Now, I want to flip to the NL side. If the Yankees survive the AL, which of the 6 in the NL side do you want to face? I mean, the easy answer here is probably the worst team, which is technically the Mets. I wouldn't want to face them. So I guess the second worst, which is San Diego.
I want the Mets.
Do you?
The
I
Mets.
don't.
I want to meet the Mets. I will almost, I don't want to put anything on it because somehow, some way, that's a Mets team that could put lightning in the bottle. But if somehow the Mets were to make it to the World Series in its own right, I would put up some kind of wager that I have to do. I don't want to. We said this the other night, which we never figured out what wager we're going to do for
Don't
locks.
remind the other guys. Don't remind. Wait, I think we were on opposite pages there.
We
So I
were on
think
opposite pages. But in this regard, I feel very, very confident it's not going to be the Mets. But if it were to be the Mets, they're not a deep team in terms of their rotation right now. Bullpen, pretty decent, all things considered. There's not a lot that scares me.
overused,
But they've overall, I would rather see them. San Diego's weird. San Diego could somehow figure it out. And imagine, by the way, if Merrill Mania had continued on, that would have been a really scary team. So I don't know. Mets would be my team, but that also could just be me personally just wanting to see a Subway Series, World Series.
I mean, I'd love to see.
We are so pie in the sky right now. First off, that the Yankees even get to that point. Then let's add in my World Series scenario. Somehow the Mets also gets to that point. New York would burn to the ground. It would be an absolute nightmare. Queens and the Bronx would be.
I don't know. I don't know if the New York talk shows would be able to ever go live again based off how they've been the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote both teams off for dead. I wrote both teams off for dead 2 weeks ago.
I mean, me too. But hey, I think I don't know why I said San Diego. You're right. They are weird. They have a lot of talent. Chicago. I don't like Chicago.
They're young. They're a couple years out.
Yes. And I think that would be fun. You know, they don't have the Rizzos, the Chris Bryants, the Kyle Hendricks that led them to the 16 World Series. But they got some talent. I don't think they're there yet. And I think the Yankees could go into Wrigley and win some games there as well. I could tell you I don't want to see Milwaukee. I don't want to see Philadelphia after last year and that fifth inning. I don't want to see Los Angeles Dodgers. So I'd remove those right away. But that's what the playoff picture looks like. It is still bound to change. Nothing is set in stone. And I think, Dylan, you and I kind of on the same sense. Let's maybe try to get rid of Boston. And let's make sure we do it while we're playing at Yankee Stadium. That is the New York Yankees. Before we get too much further into some of our other planned segments here, it is worth noting some of the struggles of this current Yankees team. As good as the gauntlet went, all things considered, again, 7-5, there are stars not hitting. Stanton, 3 for 26, 18 strikeouts over his last 8 games. McMahon hasn't hit in his 45 games with the team. Grisham is batting .202. Now, he does have 13 home runs in 47 games since July 24th. And obviously, I omitted the guys we always talk about. I omitted Volpe and I omitted, Wells because I just didn't want to talk about them again. These are the guys that, I mean, maybe not McMahon as much, but these are the guys that you need to have producing as you go into October. You need Giancarlo Stanton to be Giancarlo Stanton, and you need Trent Grisham to be what he's been this year, albeit, it's not what was expected and it's not what he's used to. It's not what his career has ever been. You need these guys to step up down this stretch. And I think, obviously Judge has gotten hot. We haven't seen a stretch where Stanton and Judge are hot at the same time. Judge started to percolate as Stanton was red hot. And as Judge started to get hotter, Stanton started to fall off. And maybe that spells something good for the postseason because we saw only Stanton hot last year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was that other guy on the team as well that could help pick up some production. But these three, at least offensively, you can add in some other players. I mean, we're going to get to the pitching staff again in a second. This is certainly concerning that these are 3 of your starters. We kind of, and again, this is something coming up in a little bit, we kind of know the starting 9 for the postseason. These are 3 glaring holes in your lineup, and then you add in the shortstop position and the catching position, and that's 5 of the 9 that you've got not producing offensively.
It's definitely worrisome. I mean, obviously tonight's one of those kind of nights that can give you some confidence. And honestly, tonight could be the start of a stretch where they do just beat up on bad teams again, like they did against the White Sox and the Nats. And, maybe that kind of catapults them into some guys getting perfectly, like carrying that little bit of momentum into the postseason. But somebody like Stanton, I don't put a ton of stock in just because we saw what he did in the postseason a year ago. He rises to the moment. He rises to the occasion. And yes, he could be going through it behind the scenes right now, but I'd rather him slump now than slump in October. So if this is when it happens, that's fine. McMahon is definitely a little bit more worrying because you kind of hoped, especially after that early start, that he had flushed away kind of that Colorado stink on him and that he just kind of wasn't going to be what he was there and that all he really needed was a change of scenery to be the Ryan McMahon that we were clamoring for them to trade a year ago. But it hasn't been that. But I then say that it's still an improvement over what you had. And even though that doesn't sound great when you're talking about 212 and 3 home runs, 16 ribbies, whatever, it's still an improvement than what you had before. I mean, trotting out Peraza and Vivas, I mean, I hope both turn out to be great major leaguers, but it was not a suitable way to win baseball games in the major leagues. And then I'll add in defensively, McMahon has been invaluable, and you can't talk about this team and the run that they had in that gauntlet without talking about Ryan McMahon being shorthanded at third base. There was somebody who said the other day that or actually Aaron Boone talked about how that he does think there is some correlation with the way that some of the pitchers have gotten a little bit more comfortable pitching to contact with McMahon over there at third than the rotating cast of characters they had before. So I think McMahon, you kind of trade that for. And then on the other side, Grisham, yes, he continues to mash, but the 202 average, which is a little bit more than it was before after tonight, but I think that's Trent Grisham baseball at this point. Like, you know that he's been good in big moments. Can he do it in the postseason? Well, we're about to find out if everything goes according to plan, but he has mashed. He's going to finish the year in career high marks in a lot of respects, and he has been as critical to this team's success this season as anybody could have imagined him being, and then some, I think, just given the way the chips just fell as they may, especially with injuries and Stanton and Judge and however. But I just personally believe Grisham, you're not looking for him to be a world beater in the postseason, but if he can come up with some of those clutch moments like he did, he will never have to buy a beer in the Bronx again. He will be a legend for ever and ever, and big sleep shirts will be running around the Bronx forever. And he might not be back with the team next year. In all likelihood, he won't be back with the team next year. So this is kind of it. And so this is the last taste of Trent Grisham in all likelihood. And the Yankees got burned for trying to catch lightning in the bottle the past couple times they've done it with the kind of those weird contracts. Because look at DJ. I mean, as much as DJ did produce during the stretch, he was a fan favorite that I don't think they were going to re-up, that they kind of got stuck re-upping. So if that happens again with Grisham, I wouldn't be shocked, but I think this is probably the end for Trent. So why don't you go out mashing? I want to see big sleep mash in the postseason. So it's like with the bats, I kind of temper things a little bit here, and maybe it's just because they're up right now and I'm feeling good about that, but all three of them have proven at points that they are valuable in their own retrospects. And I think heading into the postseason, I have hope that at least two of the three guys put it back on track. It's the other thing we're going to talk about in a beat here that I don't have that same confidence.
Yeah, and we talked about that other thing last week, and we're going to just regurgitate basically everything we said because it's only gotten worse. But for me, I agree on the Stanton point. You also have to look at Giancarlo. When he gets hot, he gets red hot. When he gets cold, he gets ice cold. That's just the way Stanton goes. And it's better that he's going cold now. You know, heck, if you want to, stay cold for a couple extra. Well, not that you want to, but maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if he stays cold for another, 4 or 5 games. This way, you start heating up and you're red hot heading into the postseason, specifically that first series, because I think that's going to be very telling of what the Yankees can or can't be. I mean, yeah, well, if they lose, there can't be anything in the postseason. McMahon, you said it. He didn't come over here to hit. He came over here to play the field. You'd want a little bit more. And I think the reason I even put him on here was because he left us with the impression pretty early on when he had that walk-off and when he, was hitting over 300 over his first 7 or 9, whatever it was. We had that thought of, like you said, he left Colorado behind and he's starting to hit. Well, clearly both trades the Yankees made with Colorado have maybe disappointed a bit. Again, McMahon's fielding has been A+ considering you don't have to consider what was there. It's been A+. It's been A+++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++ considering what was at that third base position. And 212 is about 100 points higher than what third base was probably producing. Grisham, I'm going to make a take here that I hope comes true. And last week on our other podcast, Locks and Long Shots, for those of you who haven't checked it out, you kind of made that clip, that social clip. This isn't as much about social as it is what I think it might actually be. Think back to 2009. The World Series MVP did not come back to the Yankees the following year. The name was Hideki Matsui. Trent Grisham, to me, feels like he's in the exact same spot here as Hideki Matsui was. And now Matsui had, shown a little bit more throughout his career. It wasn't just a flash in the bottle type year for Hideki. This is, kind of that flash in the bottle year for Trent Grisham. And it's got people wondering, what's that contract going to be? He's going to get paid. The Yankees, I would go out on a limb. I'd bet my mortgage, mainly because I don't have a mortgage. I'd bet my mortgage on the fact that, the Yankees will offer him the qualifying. And I think that's all they go. I don't think they sign him to a multi-year extension, especially considering Jason Dominguez, if he's still around, and Spencer Jones are right there for, grabbing that. And I think the outfielders, if you want to sign a depth one, aren't too bad in free agency this year. But all besides the point, Trent Grisham has that ability to go out as a Yankee legend that maybe didn't spend as much time in New York as fans would have liked, and could do that in a big way. He could be that catalyst that maybe not Giancarlo Stanton, because Stanton's already on the team or still on the team, but maybe he could be the Juan Soto to the Stanton and Judge of last year's playoffs, where when someone's slacking, you get that big hit from Trent, and he's given it to you all year. And there's a chance that Trent Grisham could go on a tear here again. And again, 13 home runs since July 24th. He's still hitting for power. The contact's not as much there. But he could go into the postseason and be what Hideki Matsui was in 2009. He could be that guy that gives the Yankees that extra bump, because going into 2009, you're thinking about the other guys, the other names that the Yankees had run out there and had on that team, and it was Hideki who came through. That's what it feels like Trent's going to be this year for the Yankees. And I wouldn't be surprised that if it's not Judge and not Stanton and not Belly even, it's Trent Grisham who's holding up the MVP trophy at the end of the World Series if the Yankees are to get that far. He seems like that guy this year, that difference maker that, people are sleeping on. Big sleep. Maybe wake up. Not him. He's been pretty good. But everyone else, wake up on the guy and see that this could be the guy that leads you to the promised land for the first time since 2009, for the first time since Matsui. I think it's written there. Maybe I'm making too many connections here.
I agree. I think it's written in the stars that he's the kind of special piece this year. I could see it either being him. I think it could be one of three guys, and I'll go a little bit weirder.
Wait, can I guess?
Sure.
I think one of them is going to be Belly.
Okay.
I think one of them is going to be Ben Rice.
No, but that's a shout. I was going to say Belly, so you're right there, because I feel like that would almost earn him a contract for life with the Yankees.
Jazz then.
No, although I think
I'm going to stop guessing.
Volpe. I could see Volpe, all the drama, all the hype, all the chaos of this year, and he just shows up in October and goes, what finger I'm holding behind this, to everybody who's doubted him all year, and just goes on a tear. And at the end of the day, we're like, 28 season, not great. He didn't play great. Postseason, maybe we're retiring number 11, because he could do that. It's
not off the table. He had a good postseason last year.
That's what I mean. Maybe the kid's meant for October and not for April through September,
which is a problem in its own self, but we can get there a different day. But he's had 6 days off in a row, and he comes out and his first at bat, he doubles. He likes the rest. The postseason offers more rest. He could legitimately be that guy. Like, it's not far-fetched to think so.
Shocking. The guy who has been hurt does good when you give him a break.
It's crazy. It's crazy how life works, that when you're hurt, you need a little bit of rest. And once you rest up, everything fixes itself. Come on, Yankees. It can't be that hard. Only thing I'm going to say on the Grisham thing, unlike Matsui, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Trent Grisham will definitely not be an LA Angel come next year. And if he does, well, him and Oswald Peraza can have some fun together. Let's go to the other concerning point. This will probably take a little bit more time, even though we talked about it last week. This bullpen has nobody that you can trust in the postseason, except David Bednar. Almost forgot about him because the bullpen's just been so bad. It feels like we don't see David Bednar as much as we should. Luke Weaver, 24.55 ERA in September, 10 earned runs and 3 2/3. Just hasn't been the same since he returned from injury. The 6.21 ERA. Camilo Doval, I don't think we need to say much more. He has not been what the Yankees traded for. And not just that. I think, we glance over the Jake Bird trade because they gave away Rock Riggio, who probably doesn't have a future with the Yankees, and Ben Shields, who was a lower ranked top 30 prospect. Yankees gave away a haul for Camilo Doval. They gave away 4 prospects that to some were highly thought of, and including a guy that I think people thought could be the catcher at third base next year prior to the McMahon trade and Rodriguez. I mean, he's been a disappointment. We all know Devin Williams struggles. Mark Leiter, I think a lot of people are looking at recent stretches. This dude has an 8.44 ERA over his last 30 appearances. He can't be trusted, and he, surprisingly, was the third most trusted arm in the postseason last year for the Yankees. Who are you going to go to when, let's say Max Fried's been rolling. He goes 7. You figure 8-9 you can figure out. Probably Bednar for 2 innings. Carlos Rodon can go 6-7. Who's coming in the 7th? And if Bednar pitches after Fried, who's coming in the 8th? Who's coming in the 9th? That's the question. Obviously, in the postseason, the Yankees will be more prone to pitching a guy 2 straight nights, 3 straight nights, whatever the case is. But starter number 3, Cam Schlittler, Luis Heel, Will Warren, whoever the heck it is, who's coming out of the bullpen in the 5th or 6th? Or the 7th? Because those guys don't get length. And obviously, I think this has to do a little bit more about how the Yankees, make their postseason roster. Because at the end of it, at least one of those 3 guys we just mentioned is going to be in the bullpen. And we'll have to see if they can kind of make their own due and make their own way in the bullpen. But the simple matter of fact is there's no one that I would trust. There is no one I trust outside of David Bednar. Tim Hill, he's been all right, but he's a lefty specialist. Paul Blackburn coming in a 2-run game against Boston on Sunday. What are you doing? Is he more trusted at this point than Weaver, Doval, Williams? Whew. He's been DFA'd twice this year, including by the New York Mets. I mean, I just don't see a route that it is a bullpen, and bullpens have their ebbs and flows. And the only thing you can count on right now, or hope for right now, if you're a Yankee fan, is that this rotation finds its flow and finds its rhythm heading into the postseason. Because right now, I said rotation. I meant bullpen. That this bullpen finds that flow going into the postseason. Because if not, doesn't matter. Heck, Fried could go 8. Could still blow it, right? That's what it feels like for this bullpen. It feels awful. Last year, it was a strength. Weaver, even Clay Holmes pitching in the 7th consistently and the 8th. It felt like a strength in the postseason. Mark Leiter finding something out of nowhere. Nestor Cortez. But you don't want to have those situations where, you're in a big point of any game, of any series, and you're going, who are we going to throw here? And sure, you don't have a guy most likely that's coming off of 30 days of rest because of an injury, but you got to find someone. And right now it feels like everyone in this Yankee bullpen, maybe outside of Bednar, is serving up that grand slam to Freddie Freeman.
Way to bring that in. Weaver doesn't scare me that much. And that is going to sound like the craziest statement that I make, especially because he is the highest ERA on the bottom of your ticker. He doesn't scare me that much because it does feel like he's starting to get there, if that makes sense.
No, not really. He was there in August, to be honest with you. I'm going to come back on your point here. Sorry to cut you off. He had a really good month of August. He's just fallen flat again. So it doesn't feel like he's coming on. It feels like the other way, at least to me.
I think it's one of those rare times where I actually trust what Aaron Boone has to say. And Booney said today that he has been falling flat. He knows he's been falling flat. And he knows this hasn't been Luke Weaver. Something's been missing from Luke Weaver. And he's been pretty honest about that. And the fact that Weaver sees it, the fact that Boone sees it, I think that's the first part of recognizing first part of fixing a problem is recognizing there is a problem. I don't think they realize there's a problem with Devin Williams or Camilo Doval or Mark Leiter Jr. that's really the problem in its own right. But the fact that they're at least saying, listen, we see something's up with Weaver. Weaver hasn't been himself. I would not be shocked if we get into the season at the end of the season and Weaver's been fighting some nagging injury all year and just been gritting his teeth through it, because that's been par for the course with this team at this point. But when it comes to Weaver, it's not what you've done for me lately. It's what you've done before. And what he did last year was in a time where Clay Holmes was worse than, or somehow marginally better than Devin Williams in terms of blowing games. He was the guy who came in and said, listen, this wasn't what I was brought on to be. A year before that, he was brought in as a September addition that we didn't think would ever even find a way onto this roster beyond that year. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about Luke Weaver as a guy that I'm putting stock in because I feel confident after what he did a year ago that he can do that again. And I do think that there is some confidence in me with him that I don't have with Camilo Duvall or don't have with Devin Williams and don't have with Mark Leiter Jr. because of that. And then to kind of piggyback off of that, I think that there has been things that, Boone was saying today that, Weaver's fixing different things. Weaver's putting some pitches on the dot, and then there's some he is missing his mark by a long shot and hanging stuff over the plate. And it's burned him. It's burned him. This is the worst Luke Weaver we've seen since he's been a Yankee, especially this month. But I have confidence because of what I've seen in the past with him. Maybe it's because they both weren't here a year ago, but Camilo Duvall and Devin Williams don't have that same level of confidence. If you're going to have me pinpoint one of Leiter, Williams, and Duvall, it is Duvall. I think he's got the stuff to get over the hump, especially in the postseason. But maybe it's just, he's burned so many times at this point. I don't want to see Devin Williams in the postseason at all. I don't care if you're up by 100 runs. I don't know how confident I feel in Devin Williams being out there. And it's unfortunate because in this last little run here, it hasn't been putrid. He has found a way to get things semi.
He doesn't have a 24.55 ERA.
No, so he should be the one that I'm telling you right now. Maybe the last Airbender's back, but and then Leiter is Leiter. I don't foresee, I think he can correct some things, but I don't think it's like he's going to all of a sudden flip a switch in October. Maybe I'll eat my words on that. But of those four, Weave's the one I think could get back on track. Duvall's the most likely, I think, of the bunch. And Devin Williams, I'm going to close my eyes and hold my breath every time he toes the rubber in the postseason. And that's not an insult to Devin Williams. I think Devin Williams would say that about Devin Williams at this point with how Devin Williams was played throughout the season holistically. So that's my point. I know the Luke Weaver thing makes zero sense to you, at least until I explained it. Maybe it did a little bit, but the fact that Boone and Weaver are actually saying, hey, things aren't looking good, is a little bit abnormal for them to actually come out and say. And that's one of those things where it might actually be right in front of them.
You had to bring that into. I guess we can't go an episode without saying it's all right there in front of them. I did get it more once you explained it. I'm still not quite there, but I could see a phantom IL minus the IL because I don't think they're going to want to risk putting a guy on the IL at this point of the season. I could see it just being days off, like extended days off here for Luke Weaver. And instead of, having him figure it out on a major league mound, you have him figure it out in the bullpen or under the stadium or something like that, just to get him right. And you're right. It is nice. It's refreshing. It's re-energizing even to hear Aaron Boone and Luke Weaver not just hide from the struggles. And I know, Boone has had his moments where, he acknowledges things are wrong, but never to the point where it's like, we know it's bad too. We know something's wrong with Volpe, but it's not that bad. He still has 18 home runs this season, doesn't he? Well, they're acknowledging what Luke Weaver's struggles are right now. I have one other thing that I thought of while you were talking, and it really has nothing to do with any of those guys. I kind of just echo the same sentiment. I don't have to go on. We went on about it last week as well. Yeah. There's a guy in the Yankee bullpen who has pitched twice since returning from injury. And I'm wondering if that is a strategic move for Ryan Yarbrough to actually be the Yankees 3 or potentially 4 when you get to the CS or even the DS, their 3 or 4 starter. Because we haven't. Now, what I also thought of, it was mean 3 straight lefties if you make him the number 3 starter and Fried, Rodon, and then Yarbrough. But the simple matter of fact is you've had this guy. You haven't wanted to put him in these high leverage situations and make him a short, bullpen guy. His 2 appearances have both been, it was 5 1/3 and then it was 3 innings. They're seemingly pitching him every 5 days. I don't know, we don't know anything. This is all just me talking out of my ass here. I am going to say the Yankees have something different planned than I think everyone is thinking. Because everyone right now, you and I included, Fried, Rodon, you and I are on the Schlittler train. Now, Luis Gil's got a 189 ERA over his last 5, so I think there's a decent portion of the Yankee fan base that has him. I think they remain the 3 spot, and I think a lot of people would think the Yankees recycle, and they go back to Fried. I'm not so sure about that. And obviously, the series will dictate it. If you're down, whatever in the series, yeah, you're probably going to go back to Fried when you get to a game 4 of the ALDS. And the ALCS, if you're down 3-0, you're going to go to Fried to try to save your season. But something to me screams that Ryan Yarbrough is going to be an unsung hero in this postseason. And whether they're saving him to be a starter or they're saving him to maybe get those high leverage situations and be more of a reliever in the postseason, it's going to be something to throw every other team off that they face. That's just me. It was something I realized as you were talking, like, gosh, why has the Yankees bullpen been so thin? They're not using one of their guys. Yarbrough has been out there every 5 days when something goes wrong. Something to me is a little off, and like not an off in a bad way, like a rightfully so. They're hiding something. They're hiding a hidden gem. That's what he was this season for his injury. They're hiding a hidden gem, and I think they're doing it for a big reason.
I'm kind of glad we didn't have the starter that'll kind of get moved to the bullpen for the postseason conversation today, because I think that could be a kind of thing we start to hear or figure out in the next week or so just by looking at context clues like you did there. And so maybe that kind of becomes a big conversation. I'd imagine it will be regardless that we have next week about who gets slotted into the pen, but Yarbrough could be a sneaky piece to use in that role. And the other thing is there's not a lot to look back on from him from a whole season's where he hasn't ate a lot of innings. So I don't know. It could be a sneaky dark horse to play a big role in this postseason run. I don't hate that take.
Almost could be like Mark Leiter last year, where Leiter only got to the postseason postseason roster because somebody, and I'm not remembering who, got hurt in the DS. Was it Canely? No, I don't know. Someone got hurt. Blanking right now, but that's the only reason Leiter got added.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he worked out, and we haven't even talked about Fernando Cruz. He could be a guy that gets everything going, but he has been arguably just as bad. Now we go to continue on this talk, obviously very postseason heavy since we're getting there. Judgmental Justin, that's me. Positive Price. Now, I hope I spelled everything right here because I accidentally deleted the one we had and had to respell it. I struggled with positive, and I'm hoping it's good. Last time I struggled with judgmental. This time it was positive. I got our names. That could be next week's struggle. But besides the point here, Judgmental Justin versus Positive Price, and it's the way the Yankees approach this next stretch of games. I'm blanking on the number of games left. It's what they've played coming into the day, 150, so they have 12 games left counting today, right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, yeah. No, 12 games counting today, yes.
Counting today. So Dylan and I were thinking, obviously, we like to put our thinking caps on from time to time.
Not often. Too much.
Not often.
For years.
He's got the hat on, the thinking cap on. I don't really wear them. I just need a haircut. Besides the point. Anyway, keep getting sidetracked here. The Yankees have all these tools, and we talked about this at the deadline. Would Aaron Boone be able to utilize his tools right? Caballero is supposed to be this guy as two-run shot, making it 10-3. Game's getting closer. Anyway, Caballero is supposed to be this guy, speed threat off the bench. Volpe's struggles have meant Caballero has started. He has been pretty good. I think yesterday was one of his worst games as a Yankee with the error in the field, plus the base running mistake as well. Caballero was supposed to be that. Austin Slater was supposed to be a guy to, hit against or to play against lefties because, Dominguez and Grisham have struggled against lefties this season. Slater got hurt, but he has still, even since returning, barely played. He got the start against Crochet the other night in Boston. Keep taking it, and going with it. Ahmed Rosario is supposed to be a guy to come off the bench late in games. Ahmed Rosario, and now there was a 10-day stint for him on the IL, has played in 12 games as a New York Yankee. And he wasn't supposed to come over here and really start any games, but he was supposed to play more than 12 games. And you just keep going down that line. Jason Dominguez, young guy, supposed to get this playing time, hasn't been a factor. 2 starts in the month of September. And we all know that since Stanton discovered that he has 2 legs and can move them, he hasn't played at all, basically, virtually. So to me and to you, it feels like we're looking at how the Yankees will utilize these guys over the next stretch of games, and will they do it in the right way, hence positive price, or the wrong way, hence judgmental Justin. I usually start and I'm very judgmental. I just really had to rack my brain to say all the stuff I just did. So you're starting this time.
So let's because we've had some clarification errors tonight.
Yes.
The very, very question you were asking, let's clear that up.
Yeah, I don't think I ever put a question mark on any of my sentences.
Like, is this a debate of whether or not we trust that they're going to manage this last 11 game stretch after tonight, or is this that they'll manage the bats in the lineup properly in the postseason?
No, this is about getting to the postseason, keeping everyone healthy. Will they manage this next 11 game stretch?
Yes, the answer is
correctly.
Yes, the answer is yes. I think as much as it's hard to see a Sunday night baseball game where Austin Slater's your leadoff hitter and, Caballero, for those that aren't in the Caballero camp is there. I am very much, as we figured out, in the very pro Caballero camp, especially given the fact that Volpe needed the extended rest and, was hurt. So I'm just throwing out guys who probably wouldn't be in the starting lineup. But Caballero is kind of in an iffy spot. But Ahmed Rosario, probably wouldn't see him batting in the 5 spot. I want to first remind people why Slater and Rosario were brought in, even though McMahon was brought in. Slater is statistically one of, if not the best pinch hitter in the modern era. And Ahmed Rosario, in a lot of ways, is in that top 10, I believe, as well, and has been one of the best bench players for a lot of pretty solid baseball teams over the past half a decade. So I want to add that in there. And then, there's been some people a little bit worried about, and that includes judgmental Justin, about, the shuffling of the cards, including Jason Dominguez, the kid, the fact that he has gotten, especially as we've talked about, and I think it's been used as a positive tool. And I think you tend to agree to some retrospect there is that Dominguez has got more rest than Wells. Dominguez has got more rest than Volpe. Dominguez, they have given some time too. And the fact that he's played 117 games in what I believe true, and it's his true rookie season, he's been healthy all year. He's looked sharp. I've been very, very happy with the output. So if he doesn't touch the field more than 4 times the rest of this way and then plays in the postseason, kind of good with that. Keep him healthy, keep him sitting upright, keep him ready to go for next season as well, but more particularly keep him good for the postseason because he's a guy who could be dynamite in a big-time moment. So for me, the reason I'm positive is that, yes, it does make baseball games a little bit more interesting to watch when in this home stretch you're seeing a lot of guys who will not be starting when we get into the next couple weeks. And 2 weeks from today, what would be the start of the postseason. But I'm all for getting less tread on the tires. I am all for getting some guys some much needed rest. And it's not like you're putting scrubs in there. The reason they got the bench this deep in the postseason is for the postseason and more so for this final stretch heading into it to give the guys the time off, give guys rest when needed, and then know that you have more than capable people there for going to the nod to the bench when you need a pinch hitter or a pinch runner when you get to that point. So for me, I am very, very much content with the way the lineups have looked the last couple games. I'm very much content with the fact that Austin Slater, Ahmed Rosario, they get their run now. They get some guys some time off. And all things considered, we then look down the road to the point of we might not see these guys a ton in the postseason. We will see these guys in the postseason in some capacity, but give the guys some time off right now that need it, who have been playing all season long, rotate some guys around so everybody gets some even rest. And I am all for that. Less tread on the tires is always a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but again, the question was, will they? And I know you're positive because of the last couple of games. And for me, I'd love to see everything you just said, but part of me doesn't think we're going to see what you just said. And it's a large part of me, to be honest. And again, hence the name Judgmental Justin here. It to me feels that the Yankees might try to push some things across the finish line. Some of the struggling guys. Austin Wells is going to be, needed in the postseason. In fact, he's the starting catcher in the postseason. Let's be real here. And I think they're just going to try to keep throwing him out there and trying to get his bat hot. A lot of people, well, I guess is JC on the roster, or did he end up getting sent back down?
Right now, JC is not on the roster.
Okay, he's not on the roster. But for some reason, I thought he was there. Anyway, I think for me, with just looking at how, the Yankees are going and ebbing and flowing, some guys hot, some guys cold, and even how Judge is being used, I don't think he should play 2 straight games in right. And it's easy for me to say that right now since it's a 10-3 ball game, and I think you should get him out of there as quick as possible. But the matter of fact is you should play him every other game in right, or even if that. And you should be able to, and I know they're trying to keep Stanton in the lineup and get him hot again. You got to keep your guy healthy. And I think that's where my negative look at this is I think they'll use Caballero right. I think they'll use, Ahmed a little bit more down this stretch. I think Dominguez, I'm not so sure about. I don't know if they will. To me, though, for Judge to be in back-to-back nights, and I think they're trying to test him and see if he responds well, it's not worth the test, in my opinion. And I think my concern is how they utilize those guys, the Aaron Judges. Do you want to put him out there the next 11 nights? See if he can, close the MVP race. Little foreshadow for the next segment. It's already closed, but make sure he closes it. Make sure he hits 50 home runs, maybe get up to 54 where Cal Raleigh's sitting right now. I feel like they want that. I feel like they want Stanton to play as many games as possible because of how bad the start of the season was. These are the guys you need right going into the postseason. Again, I think the, littler known names will be fine, but Belly could use days off too. And some of these, got Jazz. When was the last time someone different played second base? Maybe it was against Boston and Crochet the other day, but whatever the case is, feels like Jazz has been out there every day. I feel like it's less about, those guys and, rotating shortstop and rotating catcher and more about, just getting Judge, getting Jazz, getting Stanton, all these guys right and getting them off their feet a little bit down the stretch. It's the 5th inning of a 10-3 ball game. I'd have them all out already. If I started them all, which Boone did today, and I thought Jason Dominguez was bound to get the start today, I personally would have them out by now. And I have a feeling it's coming in the next couple innings. You don't know that for sure. That's where I'm at. I agree. I'd love to see what you're saying. I have another question, and I'm going to make this one quick, and we can have this bigger discussion next week as we talk about the postseason roster. Somebody that is currently active on the Yankees current roster will not be active. And this is hitting wise. One pitcher that's active right now, one hitter will not be on the 26-man postseason roster because the rosters are expanded to 28. I believe, and this is my question. It can be a simple yes or no, just so we can get on here and finish out this show. Do you think Jason Dominguez is the odd guy out that's left off the postseason roster? Because I do.
No.
Then who is left off? Slater?
I
can't leave Slater.
So I just made that whole case, and maybe part of it is just going to put my foot in my mouth right now. But, I mean, if it's between Dominguez and Slater, the proof's in the pudding to me that Dominguez would be the better option. But then you look at veteran, shorthand defensively, pinch-hitting weapon. Maybe it is Slater. But for me, I think you do a number on a guy's confidence in a kid like Dominguez by not leaving him on the roster. So I would do it to Slater. Maybe. No, I think it would have to be Slater.
I feel it has to be Dominguez, and I hate that because I love Dominguez, and we've talked about this so often. And just quickly, if you don't leave Slater a right-handed bat there, you're talking about a team that is almost entirely lefties, right? You're starting 9. Mm-hmm. Wells is a lefty. Rice is a lefty. Jazz is a lefty. McMahon's a lefty. Belly's a lefty. Grisham's a lefty. You need that righty. And the matter of fact is that Dominguez has struggled batting from the right side this year. So to me, I think Jason Dominguez gets left off this roster. And I think next week, we'll be able to tell over the next couple days who's used more and whatnot. and I think this is more of a conversation for next week, but it came to my mind. I wanted to put it out there. I'm not sure Dominguez is on the roster unless it's Ahmed, because we've barely seen Ahmed play.
It
That
could
would
be
be
Ahmed.
It could be
Slender's
Ahmed.
better pinch hitter than Ahmed. I don't know. That could
Ahmed's
be
played 12 games. He's a hype guy, though. He'll still be in the dugout. Anyway, let's close out this show because the case is closed. We're going to end. No judging here. Well, I guess there is a little judge because it's Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, over his last 18 games, has returned to his form after that injury. 21 of 59. That's 356, 8 homers, 20 runs batted in. This is the part that's most impressive to me. 20 walks to 12 strikeouts. This guy is getting on base over half the time, 531, as you see on your screen, 780 slugging. He just won AL Player of the Week. He went 9 of 20 with 5 homers last week. He showed up during the gauntlet. We have asked Aaron Judge to show up at the biggest moments for how long now? He showed up when it mattered most for these Yankees. He showed up in the toughest stretch of their season, in the most important stretch of their season, and helped them get to the wins that they got. And in the process, he passed Yogi Berra, and since we haven't been on the show since, he's also now passed Joe DiMaggio. What did you say?
I was tipping the cap.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to take my hat off.
And it's been impressive. You see what he's done this season in 140 games. He's got 48 homers, 102 RBIs, and this is a guy that's always hitting in the 200s. He's hitting 325. He's reaching base nearly 45% of the time. It's been crazy to watch. And the simple matter of fact is I'll tip my cap to Cal. Cal has been phenomenal. Most home runs by a switch hitter in a season, breaking Mickey Mantle's record. I don't think it's close. And I don't think the debate anymore about positional value can be, used against them. Their stats are close enough in home runs. They're close enough in runs batted in. Their teams are basically the same, except Seattle's got the AL West right now. And Cal has hit a lot less. He's reached base a lot less. His slugging is less. His OPS is well less. It feels to me pretty surely the case is closed and Aaron Judge gets another MVP.
Case is closed, but I do feel like the odds being so heavily in favor of Judge right now are a little surprising that there isn't being. For all season long, we have heard almost a pouring over of love for Cal Riley and just, it's Judge. We figure he's going to do this. And at some point he's going to slump. And he did slump, but he also got hurt. But he's pretty much going to finish off the season with one of the most impressive seasons of his career. And so when you look at that, for me, that's more than worthy to get the AL MVP, more than worthy of it. And he's going to, in all likelihood, get it. But all season long, all we've heard is, Cal's a catcher doing this. And, he's improved defensively, and defensively he looks solid. And then, he's a switch hitter doing this. And every other caveat, every other kind of case you could get in to try to not necessarily directly do it, but kind of non-directly hurt Judge's candidacy, everybody else has been trying to do for the whole year. And then all of a sudden, when he is passing all these people all time for switch hitting and he is doing all this stuff, it's like, wow, we should be tipping the cap to Cal, and maybe the odds should be a little tighter, but I'm glad we're finally acknowledging how special it is for Judge to put this whole season together, because I think the most impressive part to me is still going to be the batting average. This is going to be one of the most impressive seasons of Aaron Judge's career, doing part of that. And just to quickly, break it down here based on where everything sits, batting average wise, he still would finish ahead of last year. Now that's going to be a race to the finish line. He still would finish close to or a little bit behind his on-base percentage from a year ago. His slugging would be slightly down. His OPS would be slightly down, but his strikeouts would be pretty less. Now that is with a couple less games played, but a little bit better in terms of his walk to strikeout ratio than it was a year ago. Again, that could be because of a little bit less games played. And in a lot of statistical metrics, he's not going to meet that insane historic season from a year ago. But I don't think anybody expected him to keep this rate up to follow up that season for 2 years in a row. I think at some point, everybody was expecting there to be a slight decline in this Aaron Judge campaign. And then his injury obviously would help Cal's candidacy. But Judge, these last 18 games, has all but locked that whole damn thing up. I'm rooting for him to surpass some of his marks from a year ago now. And the one that I think has been so fascinating to me has been batting average, because if he can continue to tick that up a couple more notches just to get it over what he did a year ago, which was an incredible stat in its own right, Aaron Judge will have not just put on one of the best seasons of his career, but one of the best 2-season runs we've seen in the modern era.
It really stinks he had to miss 10 games and then was
Yeah.
cold coming out of the break, because he probably breaks most of his records, and he's a triple crown right now. But unfortunately, he missed too many games due to that injury, and then obviously went a little cold coming out of it because I don't think he was fully right. And it's just like, Cal's been great, but Judge has clearly been better. And I don't think there's any way you can reasonably argue with me or even you that Cal has been the most valuable player. Let's remember what this award is supposed to be. I mean, even if it is best player, because some people vote MVP best player. I think either way, it's Aaron Judge, but I think it's clear as day. When Judge went cold, the Yankees went cold a little bit again. He got hot in their biggest stretch. They win big games. That's where I'm at. I think the case shouldn't be open anymore. Now, over these next 11 games, Judge could go 0 for 44. We can reopen it. But for now, Aaron Judge should be his third MVP, right?
Yeah.
Third MVP award, should be a fourth. I digress on 2017. But Aaron Judge is the AL MVP, rightfully so. And I think at this point, all stats prove that. Cal's been cold for quite some time now. 224 since I believe it's June 13th or July 13th, one of the 13th. Doesn't matter. He's been a little bit cold. And I know batting average isn't a stat that tells all, but the on-base percentage is almost 100 points less. And the OPS, a lot of people put a lot of stock into the OPS. Judge is finishing at a historic pace, and that's that. Dylan, final thoughts on the New York Yankees?
Win games, survive, and maybe somehow reel in the American League East, even though that's not going to happen, but just stay where you're at. Win games, preserve your standing, and get into 2 weeks from today, the start of the season, for real, the pitch season.
Jets have who this weekend?
Tampa on a short week.
So they play Thursday? Oh, no, you mean Tampa's got the short
Tampa
week.
on a short week for them, yes. I think. Let me triple check that. Giants looked pretty good last week. Russell Wilson slinging it, baby. Some moon balls.
It was fun. I got to say, Wan'Dale Robinson, Malik Neighbors, that fun wide receiver combo. It sucks that the defense was as bad as it was, considering what that defense is supposed to be for the Giants. It's supposed to be their strong point. And, well, Sunday Night Football, everyone gets to watch the 0-2 Giants against the 0-2 Kansas City Chiefs. I am not ready to watch that game one bit, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people probably think around the league. Jets, they played the Bills. You got the tough draw there.
And they play Tampa. But then
they play Tampa.
Easier. It does get a little bit easier. After that, they have if it would have stayed up, I had the schedule up on my phone because I closed everything else out on my laptop. After that, they have a really not good Miami team right now. Cowboys team that looked better a week ago, but Broncos in London. Panthers, who Bryce Young is hitting his receivers on the marks. They just can't hold on to it. Bengals with no Joe Burrow. Browns, Patriots, and then we don't talk about what happens after that. There's a run possible.
There's a run possible. Aaron Glenn
Fields probably isn't playing this week, so that's probably
all right. Save him for the easier stretch. Win all those games instead of a few of them, and the Jets could be relevant. Aaron Glenn could get his first coaching win. I'm not. The Giants have the hardest schedule in the league this year. New Orleans is coming up though in October. That could be the win the Giants need to go 1-16 instead of 0-17. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of Bomber Boys. Yeah, eat that W like Winston did too prematurely because the Yankees ended up losing. That's Dylan Price, not the Yankees, the Giants. Dang it. I got myself confused there. That's Dylan Price. I'm Justin Chevalella. We'll see you next week on Bomber Boys. Thanks for following along as always, and take care.